Have you ever noticed how certain people seem to live rent-free in your mind? You know the feeling, that person who hurt you, who left you, who disappointed you beyond measure. They're not even in your life anymore, yet they occupy every corner of your thoughts. You wake up thinking about them. You fall asleep replaying conversations that will never happen. You find yourself checking their social presence, analyzing their every move, searching for signs that they miss you too. You tell yourself you want to forget them. You promise yourself you'll move on. You try meditation. You try dating other people. You try throwing yourself into work, but nothing works. They remain there, like a splinter in your mind that you can't quite reach. Why is this happening to you? The answer isn't what you think it is. It's not about them at all. It's about something far more profound happening in the depths of your unconscious mind. Something that Carl Jung, one of the greatest scholars of the human psyche, understood with startling clarity. You're not actually attached to them. You're attached to what they represent. You're attached to the parts of yourself that you see reflected in them. You're attached to the person you become when you're with them. Or perhaps more accurately, you're attached to the person you're not allowed to be when you're without them. This is going to sting, but it's the truth you need to hear. The person you can't let go of isn't just someone you love. They're a mirror reflecting back the parts of yourself that you've rejected, denied, or never fully owned. They're showing you aspects of your own soul that you've been too afraid to claim as your own. Carl Jung called this projection, but projection isn't just some academic concept. It's the invisible force that's been controlling your emotional life without your permission. It's the reason why you feel incomplete without them. It's why their absence feels like death. Think about it. What qualities did you admire most in this person? Their confidence, their freedom, their ability to say no, their creative spirit, their emotional depth, their rebellious nature. Now ask yourself this harder question. Are these qualities you possess, but have been afraid to express? Are these aspects of yourself that you've been keeping locked away, playing it safe, being who others expected you to be instead of who you truly are? The truth is uncomfortable, but it's also liberating. You fell in love with your own unlived life. You became attached to someone who was living the parts of yourself that you had abandoned. They weren't completing you, they were showing you what completion looks like. They were reflecting back the wholeness that was already within you, waiting to be claimed. This is why letting go feels impossible. You're not just trying to release another person. You're trying to release parts of yourself, and your unconscious mind is fighting you every step of the way because it knows that these parts belong to you. Jung understood that we don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with the disowned aspects of our own personality that we see reflected in them. We become obsessed with those who carry the energy we've suppressed within ourselves. That person you can't forget. They're not your soulmate. They're your shadow. They're carrying the parts of your soul that you've been too afraid to integrate. But here's what most people don't understand about the shadow. It's not just the dark, negative parts of yourself. It's also your light. It's your power. It's your authentic self that you've been hiding from the world. When you were a child, you learned to be acceptable. You learned to fit in. You learned to be what others needed you to be. In the process, you split yourself in half. You kept the acceptable parts and rejected the rest. You created a persona, a mask, a version of yourself that could navigate the world safely. But those rejected parts didn't disappear. They went underground. They became your shadow, and now they're calling to you through this person you can't release. The intensity of your attachment is directly proportional to the intensity of your self-rejection. The more you've denied your own power, the more powerfully you'll be drawn to those who embody it. The more you've suppressed your authentic self, the more desperately you'll cling to those who remind you of who you really are. This person isn't your missing piece. You are your missing piece. They're just showing you where to look. Your obsession with them is actually your soul's way of trying to return to wholeness. Your unconscious mind is using this attachment to get your attention. It's saying, look at what you're worshipping in them. Look at what you think they have that you don't. Look at who you become when you're with them. This is who you really are. But instead of receiving this message, you're trying to possess the messenger. Instead of reclaiming your projected parts, you're trying to control the person who's carrying them for you. This is why your attempts to detach have failed. You're trying to cut away parts of yourself. Your unconscious mind won't allow it. It knows that these parts belong to you. It knows that true detachment isn't about pushing away. It's about pulling back in. Jung believed that the goal of human life is individuation, becoming whole, integrating all aspects of yourself, both light and shadow, into a unified being. Your attachment to this person is actually your individuation process trying to happen. Your psyche is trying to heal itself through them, but it's trying to heal in the wrong direction. Instead of integrating these qualities within yourself, you're trying to possess them in another person. Instead of becoming whole, you're trying to remain split while controlling your missing pieces through someone else. This is why the attachment feels like an addiction. It is an addiction. You're addicted to the feeling of wholeness that comes from being near your projected parts. You're addicted to the version of yourself that emerges in their presence. You're addicted to the temporary integration that happens when you're with them. But temporary integration isn't real integration. It's dependency. It's keeping yourself split while using another person as your missing piece. It's the opposite of what your soul actually wants. Your soul wants to be whole. It wants to integrate. It wants to reclaim every part of itself that it has disowned. It wants to become the person you're seeking in others. This is why they feel so familiar. This is why losing them feels like losing yourself. Because in a way, you are losing yourself. You're losing the parts of yourself that you've only been able to access through them. But you don't have to lose these parts. You can reclaim them. You can integrate them. You can become whole without needing them to be whole for you. The person you can't let go of is actually trying to give you the greatest gift possible. They're showing you who you really are underneath all the masks and personas you've constructed. They're showing you the parts of yourself that you've been too afraid to own. But instead of receiving this gift, you're trying to keep them as a permanent mirror. Instead of looking at what they're reflecting, you're trying to possess the reflection itself. This is the fundamental misunderstanding that keeps you trapped in attachment. You think you need them to be whole, but the truth is, you need to be whole to truly love them. You need to integrate your shadow to stop projecting it onto others. The moment you begin to reclaim your projected parts, everything changes. The desperate need to control them disappears. The obsessive thoughts quiet down. The attachment begins to dissolve naturally because you're no longer split. You're no longer seeking completion outside yourself. This doesn't mean you stop caring about them. It means you stop needing them to be your missing piece. It means you love them for who they are, not for who you become when you're with them. It means you can appreciate them without trying to possess them. But first, you have to be willing to see the truth. You have to be willing to look in the mirror. They're holding up for you. You have to be willing to ask yourself the hard questions about what you're really attached to and why. What parts of yourself have you been too afraid to claim? What aspects of your personality have you been keeping locked away? What version of yourself emerges when you're with them that you've been afraid to be on your own? These are the questions that will set you free, not because the answers are easy, but because they point you toward the real work, the work of integration, the work of becoming whole, the work of reclaiming every part of yourself that you've scattered into other people. This is where the real journey begins, not with trying to forget them, but with trying to remember yourself, not with pushing them away, but with pulling your projections back home where they belong, not with detachment, but with integration. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you really are, the journey of integrating your shadow and reclaiming your wholeness, the journey of learning to love yourself so completely that you no longer need others to complete you. These aren't metaphorical chains, they're psychological bonds that operate below the threshold of awareness, pulling strings you didn't even know existed. They're the reason why you can't just decide to stop caring. They're the reason why your emotions seem to have a life of their own when it comes to this person. Jung understood that our psyches are connected in ways that our rational minds cannot fully comprehend. He discovered that we don't just project individual traits onto others, we project entire archetypal patterns, universal templates that exist in what he called the collective unconscious. And the most powerful of these archetypal projections, the projection of your inner masculine and feminine, your anima and animus, the parts of your psyche that represent the opposite gender qualities within you. This is where attachment becomes something far more profound than simple emotional dependency. This is where it becomes a spiritual crisis, a crisis of incompleteness that reaches into the very core of who you are. Every person carries within them both masculine and feminine energies. Regardless of your biological gender, you have an inner masculine side that represents assertion, logic, direction, and strength. You also have an inner feminine side that represents intuition, emotion, receptivity, and creativity. But here's what happens in our culture. From childhood, you're taught to develop only the qualities that match your gender. If you're a man, you're encouraged to develop your masculine side while suppressing your feminine side. If you're a woman, you're encouraged to develop your feminine side while suppressing your masculine side. This creates a fundamental split in your psyche. Half of who you are gets developed. The other half gets pushed into the shadow. And that suppressed half doesn't disappear. It lives on in your unconscious mind, waiting for someone to carry it for you. When you meet someone who embodies your undeveloped side, something magical and terrible happens. You don't just fall in love with them, you fall into a state of psychological dependency. They become your access point to the parts of yourself that you've never learned to express. If you're a man who has suppressed his emotional, intuitive side, you'll become obsessed with women who embody these qualities. If you're a woman who has suppressed her assertive, independent side, you'll become obsessed with men who embody these qualities. But this isn't just about gender. It's about any qualities that you've disowned within yourself. This is why the attachment feels so desperate. It's not just about wanting them. It's about needing them to be whole. It's about using them as a bridge to parts of yourself that you can't access any other way. But here's the trap. The more you rely on them to provide your missing qualities, the more dependent you become. The more dependent you become, the more you lose touch with your own ability to develop these qualities within yourself. You become addicted to their presence, because it's the only way you know how to feel complete. This is why they feel irreplaceable. It's not because they're so special, it's because they're carrying irreplaceable parts of you. They're serving as the repository for aspects of your personality that you've never learned to own. Jung called this phenomenon the anima and animus projection, but it's more than just a psychological concept. It's the invisible force that creates soul-level attachments. It's what makes you feel like you've found your other half. It's what makes the thought of losing them feel like psychological death. Because in a way, it is death. It's the death of the version of yourself that you can only access through them. It's the death of the temporary wholeness that their presence provides. It's the death of the bridge to your own suppressed qualities. But what if I told you that this death is exactly what you need? What if the loss of this external bridge is precisely what forces you to build an internal bridge? What if their absence is your psyche's way of demanding that you reclaim what was always yours? This is the deeper purpose of attachment and loss. It's not cruel coincidence. It's the individuation process trying to happen. Your psyche is using this attachment to show you what you need to integrate, and it's using the pain of separation to motivate you to do the work. Think about the qualities you're most drawn to in them: their confidence, their emotional depth, their creative expression, their ability to take risks, their capacity for intimacy, their strength, their softness. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you expressed these qualities in your own life? When was the last time you took a risk? When was the last time you allowed yourself to be truly vulnerable? When was the last time you stood up for yourself? When was the last time you honored your intuition? The qualities you worship in them are the qualities you've abandoned in yourself. The intensity of your attraction to these qualities is directly proportional to the intensity of your self-abandonment. This is why trying to detach by avoiding them doesn't work. You're not just avoiding them, you're avoiding the parts of yourself that they represent. You're reinforcing the very split that created the attachment in the first place. True detachment doesn't come from pushing them away. It comes from pulling your projections back. It comes from developing within yourself the qualities that you've been seeking in them. It comes from becoming whole instead of remaining split. But your ego doesn't want this. Your ego prefers projection because projection is easier than integration. It's easier to find someone who embodies your missing qualities than it is to develop these qualities yourself. It's easier to fall in love than it is to fall into yourself. This is why you resist the pain of separation. Not just because you miss them, but because you're afraid of having to become whole on your own. You're afraid of the work it will take to integrate your shadow. You're afraid of the responsibility that comes with not needing others to complete you. But this fear is based on a misunderstanding. Integration isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming who you've always been beneath the conditioning. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that were suppressed, not because they were wrong, but because they weren't acceptable to others. The masculine qualities you see in them, they're already within you, waiting to be expressed. The feminine qualities you admire, they're already part of your psyche, waiting to be honored. The creativity, the strength, the vulnerability, the confidence, it's all already there. You don't need them to access these qualities. You need to give yourself permission to embody them. You need to risk being rejected for who you really are, instead of being accepted for who you pretend to be. This is where the real work begins, not in trying to forget them, but in trying to remember yourself. Not in cutting the energetic cords, but in understanding why those cords formed in the first place. Every quality you've projected onto them is a quality that wants to be born in you. Every aspect of their personality that captivates you is an aspect of your own personality that's trying to emerge. Every way they make you feel is a way you can learn to make yourself feel. But this requires something that most people aren't willing to do. It requires you to take full responsibility for your own wholeness. It requires you to stop looking for salvation in other people and start looking for integration within yourself. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming an individual, not just a fragment of a person seeking completion in others, but a whole person capable of relating from fullness rather than emptiness. This is why attachment often intensifies right before breakthrough. Your unconscious mind knows that integration is possible. It can sense that wholeness is within reach, but it's also terrified of what this means. Because wholeness means the end of projection, and the end of projection means the end of using others as repositories for your disowned parts. This is scary for the ego, because the ego has built its entire identity around being incomplete. It's built its entire strategy for finding love around offering only half of yourself and hoping someone else will provide the other half. The prospect of becoming whole threatens this entire system, but here's what the ego doesn't understand. Wholeness doesn't make you less lovable, it makes you more lovable, because whole people don't need love. They offer love, they don't seek completion in others, they seek connection, they don't project their missing pieces onto others, they relate to others as they actually are. This is the ultimate irony of attachment. The more attached you are, the less you're actually relating to the real person. You're relating to your projection. You're relating to the version of them that carries your disowned parts. You're in love with a mirror, not a person. True love can only happen between whole people, people who have integrated their shadows, people who have reclaimed their projections, people who are relating from choice rather than need. But to get there, you have to be willing to go through the death of your current way of relating. You have to be willing to let go of using others as your missing pieces. You have to be willing to face the parts of yourself that you've been too afraid to own. This is why the path to emotional freedom often feels like losing everything, because you are losing everything. You're losing your old way of being incomplete. You're losing your addiction to projection. You're losing your need for others to validate your existence. But what you gain is infinitely more valuable. You gain yourself, all of yourself. The parts you've been proud of, and the parts you've been ashamed of. The parts you've been showing the world, and the parts you've been hiding. The masculine and the feminine, the light and the shadow, the human and the divine. You gain the ability to love without attachment, to care without control, to relate without projection, to be whole without needing others to complete you. This is what's waiting on the other side of your attachment. Not the absence of love, but the presence of authentic love. Not the absence of connection, but the presence of genuine connection. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of integrated feeling. The person you can't let go of has been your teacher all along. They've been showing you which parts of yourself need to be reclaimed. They've been holding up a mirror to your own unlived potential. They've been serving as a bridge to your own wholeness. But now it's time to cross that bridge. It's time to reclaim what's yours. It's time to integrate what you've been projecting. It's time to become the person you've been seeking in others. This is the real meaning of detachment. Not emotional numbness, but emotional sovereignty. Not the absence of love, but the presence of self-love so complete that you can love others without needing them to love you back. The invisible chains that bind you to them aren't chains of love. They're chains of incompleteness, and the key to breaking these chains isn't in their hands. It's in yours. It's in your willingness to become whole. It's in your commitment to your own individuation. The question isn't whether you can let go of them. The question is whether you can let go of being incomplete. Whether you can let go of using others as your missing pieces. Whether you can let go of projection and step into integration. This is the only path to true freedom. The only path to authentic love. The only path to the wholeness that you've been seeking in their eyes. It's been waiting inside you all along. But knowing this and experiencing it
are two entirely different things. The path from projection to integration isn't a straight line. It's an alchemical process that transforms the lead of your attachment into the gold of your wholeness.
Jung understood alchemy not as the medieval pursuit of turning base metals into gold, but as a profound metaphor for psychological transformation. The alchemists weren't just trying to transform matter, they were trying to transform consciousness. They were trying to achieve what you're trying to achieve right now, the integration of opposites, the marriage of shadow and light, the birth of the authentic self. Your attachment to this person is your raw material, your prima materia, the base metal that contains within it the potential for gold. But to transform it, you must be willing to put it through fire. You must be willing to let it die so that something new can be born. This is why most people remain stuck in attachment. They're trying to avoid the fire. They're trying to skip the death. They want the gold without the transformation. They want wholeness without integration. They want freedom without facing their shadow. But there is no shortcut through the alchemical process. The death of your attachment isn't just the end of your obsession with them. It's the death of the false self that needed them for completion. It's the death of the persona that was only half a person. It's the death of every strategy you've used to avoid becoming whole. This death feels terrifying because you don't know what will be born from it. You've spent so long being incomplete that you can't imagine what wholeness feels like. You've spent so long projecting your missing pieces that you can't imagine what it would be like to have them all back. But this is exactly what makes the transformation so profound. You're not just getting over someone, you're becoming someone entirely new. You're not just healing from heartbreak, you're healing the fundamental split in your psyche that made heartbreak inevitable. The person you'll become after this integration isn't the person you were before you met them. It's the person you were always meant to be. It's the person who contains both the qualities you've been proud of and the qualities you've been projecting. It's the person who no longer needs others to feel complete. This is what Jung meant by the birth of the self with a capital S. Not the ego self that needs external validation, but the authentic self that contains all opposites within it. The self that is both masculine and feminine, both strong and vulnerable, both independent and connected. But how do you actually make this transformation happen? How do you move from knowing about projection to actually reclaiming your projections? How do you go from understanding your shadow to integrating your shadow? The first step is brutal honesty. You must be willing to see exactly what you've been projecting onto them. Not just the obvious qualities, but the subtle ones. Not just what you admire about them, but what you resent about them. Because your resentments are projections too. They're showing you aspects of yourself that you judge and deny. What irritates you most about them? Their selfishness, their emotional distance, their need for control, their unpredictability. These aren't just their flaws, these are your disowned shadows. These are parts of yourself that you've been too afraid to acknowledge. Jung's famous quote bears repeating, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Your irritation is a compass pointing toward your shadow. Your judgment is a mirror reflecting your self-rejection. But here's what most people miss. Your shadow isn't just negative. Your shadow contains your power. It contains the qualities you've been afraid to express because they might make you less acceptable to others. Your authentic anger, your authentic selfishness, your authentic sexuality, your authentic ambition, your authentic wildness. The parts of them that you judge are often the parts of yourself that you've been suppressing out of fear. Fear of being too much, fear of being rejected, fear of being powerful, fear of taking up space. To integrate your shadow, you must be willing to own these disowned parts. Not to become them completely, but to acknowledge that they exist within you. To find healthy ways to express them instead of projecting them onto others. This is where the real work begins. Not in your head, but in your life. Not in understanding your projections, but in embodying your wholeness. If you've been projecting confidence onto them, you must practice being confident yourself. If you've been projecting emotional depth onto them, you must practice expressing your own emotions. If you've been projecting creativity onto them, you must practice creating. If you've been projecting strength onto them, you must practice being strong. But this isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming who you've always been beneath the masks. It's about giving yourself permission to express the fullness of your humanity instead of just the acceptable parts. This process requires what Jung called active imagination, the practice of consciously engaging with your unconscious mind, of having conversations with the parts of yourself that you've been avoiding, of asking your shadow what it needs, of listening to what your unlived life is trying to tell you. Start having conversations with the qualities you've been projecting. If you've been projecting confidence, ask your inner confident self what it needs to emerge. If you've been projecting creativity, ask your inner artist what it's been trying to create. If you've been projecting strength, ask your inner warrior what battles it's been wanting to fight. These aren't just metaphors. These are real aspects of your psyche that have been waiting for your attention. They have wisdom for you. They have gifts for you. They have energy that you can integrate and express. But integration isn't just about reclaiming your projections. It's about learning to hold opposites within yourself without needing to split them apart. It's about becoming large enough to contain both your light and your shadow, both your masculine and feminine, both your strength and vulnerability. This is what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold tension between opposites until a third option emerges, the ability to be both independent and connected, both assertive and receptive, both rational and intuitive. Most people can't tolerate this tension. They want to be one thing or another. They want to be either strong or vulnerable, either masculine or feminine, either independent or connected. But wholeness requires you to be both. It requires you to become large enough to contain contradictions. This is why attachment feels so compelling. It allows you to split these contradictions. You can be strong while they're vulnerable. You can be rational while they're emotional. You can be independent while they're connected. You get to feel complete without actually integrating your opposites. But true integration requires you to develop both sides within yourself, to be strong and vulnerable, to be rational and emotional, to be independent and connected, to be the full spectrum of human experience instead of just half of it. As you begin this integration process, something miraculous happens. The obsessive thoughts about them begin to quiet, not because you're suppressing them, but because you're no longer split. The desperate need to control them begins to fade, not because you've stopped caring, but because you're no longer using them to feel whole. The attachment begins to transform into something else entirely. Instead of needing them, you begin to appreciate them. Instead of trying to possess them, you begin to honor them. Instead of relating to your projection of them, you begin to see them as they actually are. This is what authentic love looks like. Love that doesn't need the other person to be anything other than who they are. Love that doesn't require possession or control. Love that can exist with or without reciprocation, because it's not based on getting something from the other person. But to reach this kind of love, You must be willing to love yourself this completely first. You must be willing to accept all parts of yourself, not just the acceptable ones. You must be willing to integrate your shadow instead of projecting it. You must be willing to become whole instead of remaining split. This doesn't mean you become perfect. It means you become integrated. It means you stop fighting parts of yourself and start working with them. It means you stop trying to be half a person seeking completion in others and start being a whole person capable of authentic connection. The person you can't let go of will notice this transformation before you do. They'll sense that something has shifted in you, that you're no longer looking to them for completion, that you're no longer trying to make them responsible for your wholeness. And paradoxically, this is often when they become most interested in you, because whole people are magnetic. Integrated people are attractive. People who don't need you are the most compelling people to be around. But by then it won't matter, because you'll have discovered something far more valuable than their attention. You'll have discovered your own completeness. You'll have learned to generate internally what you used to seek externally. This is the ultimate freedom. Not freedom from feeling, but freedom from being controlled by your feelings. Not freedom from others, but freedom to choose how you relate to others. Not freedom from love, but freedom to love authentically instead of attachedly. This transformation isn't just about this one person. It's about every relationship you'll ever have. Once you learn to integrate your projections with one person, you begin to see your projections everywhere. You begin to understand that every strong reaction you have to someone is showing you something about yourself. Every person who triggers you is carrying your shadow. Every person you idealize is carrying your unlived potential. Every person you can't stop thinking about is carrying parts of yourself that you need to reclaim. This awareness transforms every relationship into an opportunity for integration. Every conflict becomes a chance to reclaim a projection. Every attraction becomes a chance to develop disowned qualities within yourself. Every irritation becomes a chance to face your shadow. This is what it means to live consciously, to take responsibility for your own wholeness, instead of making others responsible for it. To use your relationships as mirrors for self-discovery instead of sources of completion. The practical steps for this integration are simpler than you might think, but they require consistent practice. Begin each day by asking yourself, what qualities am I seeking in others that I could develop in myself? Notice when you're having strong reactions to people and ask, what is this person reflecting back to me about myself? When you find yourself obsessing about someone, ask, what aspects of my own personality am I seeing in them that I need to integrate? When you feel that desperate need for someone's attention, ask, what kind of attention do I need to give myself? Practice expressing the qualities you've been projecting. If you've been projecting confidence, practice speaking up for yourself. If you've been projecting creativity, practice creating something. If you've been projecting emotional depth, practice expressing your feelings authentically. Have conversations with your shadow. Ask the parts of yourself that you judge what they're trying to tell you. Ask the qualities you've been suppressing what they need to be expressed in healthy ways. Most importantly, practice loving yourself as completely as you've been trying to love them. Practice accepting all parts of yourself, not just the parts that others approve of. Practice being the source of the love you've been seeking from them. This is the path to liberation. Not liberation from them, but liberation from the need for them to complete you. Not liberation from love, but liberation into authentic love. Not liberation from feeling, but liberation from being controlled by unconscious projections. The person you can't let go of has been your greatest teacher. They've shown you which parts of yourself need to be integrated. They've held up a mirror to your own potential wholeness. They've served as a bridge to the person you're capable of becoming. But now it's time to cross that bridge. It's time to become the person you've been seeking in them. It's time to integrate what you've been projecting. It's time to love yourself so completely that you can love others without attachment. This is your invitation to wholeness, your invitation to authentic selfhood, your invitation to the kind of love that doesn't diminish you but expands you, the kind of connection that doesn't complete you but complements you, the kind of relationship that doesn't save you but celebrates you. The choice is yours. You can remain attached to the person who represents your unlived life, or you can begin living that life yourself. You can continue projecting your wholeness onto others, or you can begin integrating it within yourself. You can keep seeking completion in relationships, or you can begin relating from completeness. Your shadow is calling you home. Your authentic self is waiting to be born. Your wholeness is ready to be claimed. The only question is, are you ready to stop being half a person seeking completion and start being a whole person capable of authentic love? The transformation begins the moment you say yes.